So DAO VC is building on the concept of community decision making and governance, and it's in contrast with traditional VC, central authority decision making. It will be an autonomous venture ecosystem for both end users and startups, right? The idea, and even to the control, we kind of touched on when we were going through that presentation, it won't be this overarching thing. I think, like I said, a lot of this, you're going to get more out of it. You're going to be able to kind of throw this into the DAO and into this like mastermind group, and you get all kinds of ideas out of this, right?
Yeah. Just to pause you right there and to piggyback off that.
Yeah.
So I watched a show on Netflix actually a couple nights ago.
Yeah.
I've seen it on there a few times. I just never like it's caught my interest, but I just never went and watched it. But I watched it fully the other night, and it's called "The Boy That Harnessed the Wind," and it's set somewhere it's called Wimby. It's a small village in Africa, and their main source of income for their entire village. It's a small village. I don't know the population, but they didn't really have a whole lot of technology, a whole lot of infrastructure, and their main source of transportation was walking. And a bicycle was like, you had a little bit more wealth if you had a bike.
Yeah.
But so their main source, they all lived off the land. So they said, like, the family that it followed, they were upset that their previous generations used to have to pray to the rain or pray to the gods for it to rain. And so like the wife and the husband in this movie promised that they weren't going to get to a low level of wealth that they had to pray to the gods just for rain. They wanted to have sustainable income so they can feed their families and whatnot. Well, they ended up going through a few droughts, and their land dried up and throughout the whole village. And so all of them were struggling to figure out how to have food. They didn't have any grain. They didn't have any way of producing food for themselves, let alone an income. And so the village is starting to starve. And one kid, he was 13 years old. He got kicked out of school, but he worked a deal for a way for him to get into the library and start studying something. It was a book. It was like using energy. So he figured out this 2001. It was based in, it's a true story. But he starts reading this book on how to use energy. And it was a way for him. He figured out a way to create a windmill to power, to create electricity, to power a pump. And that pump drew water out of their well. And he was able to water the farmland. And then they're able to create more harvests and have, instead of relying on rain, they're able to create more food and whatnot. He ended up getting a couple scholarships, and he ended up actually graduating from Dartmouth University, and he's created wealth for the village and whatnot. But what was cool about it to me was how many, ingenuity and how many ideas are out there of these local villages around the world that they'd be able to come up with to help create a better standard of living for all their villages or their towns or even their cities, and they're lacking, maybe an access of capital, or even, there's all these great ideas of engineering and ingenuity that don't get explored because maybe they're not fancy enough for the VCs, they're not fancy enough for the bank.
Right.
To where here you can have literal citizens around the world, or people, I say citizens, but actual people. You have humanity around the world that have access to, something like this, the SBU DAO, and we'd be able to fund ideas around the world for people to better their living situations, better their economies, better their governments, better their cities. And what's great about that is we're not biased, or we're not stuck to one form of thinking, because we're global. So it's not just this group of people in Northern California, or these group of people in New York, or this group of people in Hong Kong or Berlin that get to decide what gets funded and what doesn't. It's actual global people, whether they're in South America or South Africa or North Africa or Southeast Asia or Middle East. They get to see what their cities and villages need. And if they have access to a bee, they can hopefully deploy funding or capital to explore those ideas to better humanity, better for themselves.
It is. That's cool, man. I mean, because of course that would be financially good, right? But the best thing is, like you said, that's not the main goal, right? The main goal is to improve their community, improve their village. That's a whole different level of people wanting to work and kind of tackle a problem. that they're gonna, more than likely it's gonna be successful. You know what I mean? It's a
Yeah.
it's a whole nother type of energy, right?
But think of you know, here in the U.S. we've especially in major cities, we're able to continually advance our innovations and our tech
Hmm.
because we have a food supply. We have income coming in uh, through trade or whatever it may be, to where there's a lot of the population, maybe a third of the global population, that is still reliant on trying to figure out how to feed themselves.
Yep.
And so if we're able to tackle that problem to where that becomes almost like a standard taken care of, then they can start beginning on solving further problems. So instead of having maybe 2% or 5% of the global population trying to solve problems, you start to have 20%, 30%, and then we start exponentially advancing all sorts of society,
Right.
from all technologies.
What's cool too is that stuff. It helps even with immigration. I'm just, we're getting deep now, but people,
That's what this is for.
but it is
Dow
awesome, man.
rabbit hole.
It is, because you are down. I mean, and it makes people where they're at, right? This is their friend, this is their people, this is their family, this is their country. So they're going to want to better that area, right? So you don't have all this migration and all these people. Nothing wrong with it, right? I'm just saying that's what you want to keep. You want to keep that human capital of those people that are hungry and have these great ideas and want to better their own, right? That's where they should be doing it. They should be doing it what their home is, because you have that kind of mentality, and now you have access to this a fund and capital. You can do amazing things, man.